for life, and we forgot our disclaimer.
Way to go. You did great. You did
Yeah,
a great job.
wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. So I'm just going to go ahead and explain that the views and opinions expressed on Furry Frequencies are opinions of the host and respective guests and do not reflect the views and opinions of show staff, sponsors, guests, past or present, or the management of Furry Frequencies. Show discusses adult topics and uses adult language. Listener discretion is advised. This show is intended for an 18-plus audience. Welcome to Furry Frequencies, the soundtrack to your furry life. I'm Lifty, and joining me on the podcast this evening is Silox.
Hey, how's it going, folks?
And on tonight's podcast, thank you. Sorry about the interruption. But on tonight's podcast, we are definitely going to be talking about our special report on the current news, the breaking news regarding FurAffinity United. So that was recently, that broke like shortly around on about Friday or so. And it was really shocking news, because probably nobody expected it, but some people were just like, oh well, whatever. But anyway, before we get started, we just want to remind everyone, how on earth do you get involved with Furry Frequencies? And it's very easy. So if you want to get involved and come and join us and actually speak and ask questions, you are free to do so. The best way to do this is to go to our Furry Frequencies Twitter page, and right there at the very top you will see a pinned tweet that has a big Discord box. It's a link. Click it, and that will send you to our important README page for our Furry Frequencies Discord. Please read it. There are a lot of very important things you need to know about how to call in, behavior, what to expect on our podcast, etc., etc. Please read that, then join our waiting room, and you can just hang out, chill, relax as you listen to us, and there will be a moderator standing by to take your call. So
Yes.
what we want to get to today is, of course, our special report on FurAffinity United. So last weekend, after we did our podcast, of course, the big news broke that FurAffinity United is to shut its doors permanently. So we decided we were going to just jump in and make that the context of our podcast this evening. Let's see. And unfortunately, I think that we might be having some issues. We might be having some technical issues right now. It's yeah. Right now my internet is slowing down. Bloody hell. So anyway, yeah, I'm just got to wing it. So on this evening, we're going to be talking about that, and we're also going to be talking about the domino effect that the closure of FAU United might have on other smaller conventions. And just to get us started with some ASMR, here you go. Oh yeah.
Lovely Perrier. Look at that.
Yes, yes. Nice, lovely Perrier right there in front of the microphone. Oh yeah. Yeah, listen to that bubbly. Amazing. Yes, 750 milliliters of Perrier into
And
the
it's
cup.
all zero calories. By the way, this before we go, this week's sponsor is not unfortunately Perrier. This week's sponsor is Android. Why Android? Because Android is 100% better than iPhone or Huawei or Google, because they made a phone too. So here's what you do: You go to your local Verizon, Consumer Cellular, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, Boost Mobile, Mint. Am I getting them all correct? I think that's all they have. Go to your local cell phone provider, right? And you ask for an Android. I don't care what Android it is. You ask that man or woman or person. You say, hey, buddy, look at me, buddy. I want you to give me your finest Android phone. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care if it costs $500, $1,000, $10,000, $9,284.17. I don't care how much it costs. You put that money down on the Android phone like it matters, because it will be the last thing you do. And you get that phone, and you activate that phone, and you enjoy that phone for the next 2 years until the new model comes out. And then when the new model comes out, you upgrade that motherfucker. Right? Android. We're better than Apple because Apple sucks.
Sounds like somebody had a bad time with an Apple iPhone.
That, and I love being paid money, so I will show whoever pays me money at this point.
Are they paying you money? Because they ain't paying me money.
Well, you know what? They pay me enough. They pay me money to say whatever positives I can about Android and anything negative about Apple. It all works out.
Okay. All right. Okay, so our internet is working again. Thank you so much for that diversion. And we have of course, FAU United up and running on Twitter. And on December 2nd, they decided to grace their Twitter feed with this large info, or this large letter, this large beautiful letter that shows their mascots frolicking in leaves. But it says, "It is with much regret that we are formally announcing FA United is closing its doors. This is not a decision made lightly, but unfortunately COVID-19 has brought forth too many complications and risks for a small convention like ours to operate safely and successfully. The world around us has changed in the past year, and not for the better. It's difficult to know what lay in store for the future due to the current pandemic, and that makes planning and organizing a convention extremely difficult in these current times. We're sad to have delivered this news. Over the years, we've formed a fantastic bond with all of our attendees and brought together incredible talent and personalities to entertain one and all. We've got a lot of great memories, from Newark to Mount Laurel, from Hanover to Dulles. FA United may have been small con, but we were mighty in heart. We want to thank each and every one of you for joining us over the years. We've had a lot of great times, amazing memories, fantastic performances, and we owe it all to you. You've been fantastic, and we'll never forget the great times. Remember to stay safe, wear a mask. So long, and thanks for all the fish. Dragoneer." So this was, of course, a big surprise. This comes at the heels of... back in June, they had to cancel their 2020 event, of course. And, fuck off, BuzzFeed. Fuck off. You killed my digital marketing grade, you fucking bitch of a fucking website.
Nah, it wasn't BuzzFeed. You know who.
It were the cunts that I was working with that wanted to do nothing.
It was them. Don't blame BuzzFeed.
No, I'm blaming BuzzFeed too. It's a shitty site. Bunch of trash. But anyway, going back to what we were saying, this is a kind of a very bittersweet moment because we talked about FAU on this podcast quite a bit, and not really have said much of anything endearing about the event. We kind of just trashed it as, this small little event that everybody loves to ghost, because there's not really much to offer, and it's out in the middle of Dulles, and how in the hell do you get there anyway? And of course we always just like dunk on Dragoneer and all that, but and it's very easy right now on the heels of that announcement to just trash this event and trash Dragoneer and trash FAU and trash all the volunteers and say good riddance and so long, and nothing about it is lost. But we won't. because right now we have to think about how this is hitting close to home. And if you've been listening to our podcast, you will remember that this is what I've been warning about multiple times in multiple episodes throughout this podcast, in which the COVID-19 crisis is going to kill smaller cons. It's going to creep its way towards endangering the larger cons as well. And 2021 has got to be a put up or shut up year for furry conventions. This is the first domino. Whether you like FAU or not, this is the very first domino in a row of dominoes that's falling down. And who knows what the next one's going to be. But I'm looking at all of these conventions that are 1,000 attendees or less. I'm looking at them and wondering, can you really survive COVID? This should be a warning to you. This should be a wake-up call. And because we wanted to also set the record straight, we actually went ahead, well, FAU United, they saw our tweet back on Friday, and they decided, they wanted to reach out to us and say, hey, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And of course, we did. We asked questions via their PMs on Twitter. So we asked them what caused the con to shut its doors. So their answer was, the decision was made to close our doors after a few issues. To start, our hotel fought us on canceling our 2020 contract despite having a coronavirus cancellation clause. They didn't appear to want to put attendee safety first. On top of that, we recently experienced a death in our quote-unquote family when one of our directors passed away unexpectedly. FAU has always been a small con. We never really had ambition to be a big con, but as a small con, missing 2 years puts a damper on the con's momentum. What happens if attendees don't return in the same numbers? What if COVID puts a lot of people off on social gatherings in the future? If we lost 10% of our attendees due to these unknowns, that could put the convention into financial jeopardy, and it's simply too hard to plan for these unknowns. So let's discuss this. So, so that kind of confirms something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm curious about this coronavirus cancellation clause that they're talking about, because if they had a clause in their contract for coronavirus, or to provide some sort of relief for coronavirus, in which they can, or drop they can drop the event because of coronavirus, I'd be curious what's in that clause that both the hotel and FAU can agree with, because if they had a coronavirus clause and the hotel decides not to honor it, that could be grounds for a lawsuit, I would think. I don't know now. I don't know about the FAU coffers. I don't know about Dragoneer and how much he wants to. I don't know how much he wants to put money. How much money he wants to put down on it. But you would think that if there's a clause in a contract, that's part of the contract that both parties have to agree to. And if one party doesn't agree to it, that's a breach of contract. Is it not?
Oh, no, that would be a breach of contract.
Yeah.
But I think in this case, you'd have to probably ask someone who's more experienced in the legal field, someone like a Boozy Badger, who would probably understand the legalese behind all that, and will give you a much better answer as to why FAU didn't pursue didn't pursue a legal remedy to this, if it seemed like the Hyatt was in breach of their contract. Maybe there's something else that we don't know as attendees, that we don't know that happened behind the scenes, that also allowed the Hyatt to sort of not honor their contract. There might be out clauses from the standpoint of the Hyatt.
Okay.
They might have an out clause that says, okay, we're not going to honor this if X, Y, and Z happens. And you can't sue us because of that.
So going back to that, I do think that they might figure out an out, or I'm saying that the Hyatt might figure out an out in the contract. There might be somewhere in the legalese within the coronavirus clause saying that that this clause is null and void if the state and local authorities determine it to be safe to
Mhm.
host an event. And here's where it gets tricky. When does state and local authorities determine it to be safe? If it says in the clause that it has to be determined right now, as of this moment, that it has to be safe for the coronavirus clause to kick in, then yeah, Dragoneer has a strong case on his hands. But if they decide, if it says in the contract that it has to be determined during the time of the convention, like, so whenever they decide to put on the 2021 convention, if the state and local authorities decide at that time that it is safe for this event to go on, then I'm sorry, but there is no coronavirus clause for that. Yeah, I think we should have followed up on that, but anyway, hindsight. Um, so there's kind of a question there about the coronavirus clause. When does it take place? What kind of time period are we talking about when it comes to the coronavirus clause? And it could go either way, because certainly any judge right now could find that, yeah, the coronavirus clause says, if it's not safe right at this moment to host an event, then by all means, the coronavirus clause kicks in and you cannot host an event. Therefore, Dragoneer is in the right. But if they decide to cancel and reschedule for some time next year, it has to be safe that same time next year. And if it's not safe, then the coronavirus clause kicks in. If it's not, then the Hyatt can be offered relief, because Dragoneer is canceling the contract under a pretense that it just doesn't exist.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would say, yeah, probably look into a follow up for that. Um, but they also add in some unknowns here that might jeopardize their success. What happens if attendees don't return the same numbers? What if COVID puts a lot of people off on social gatherings in the future? If we lost 10% of our attendees due to these unknowns, that could put the convention into financial jeopardy, and it's simply too hard to plan for these unknowns. So this is something that I kind of wondered about and said that this is a warning for all of those small 1,000 or less conventions that are happening all over America, because this is your wake up call. This is what's threatening you. You don't know how conventions will be handled in the future. You don't know if people are going to want to go to conventions in the same spirit, in the same way that they have prior to COVID. You're probably going to be having a lot of people that are going to be spooked to going into conventions. Some people are probably just going to, they're writing off conventions permanently. They're not going to conventions anymore. And I'm not judging you if you decide this. I'm not judging you. That's totally up to you. But I think if you're the organizer of a convention and you have an event that you're going to have take place, of course, the first round of COVID, it was unexpected. Nobody really expected it, and canceling, everybody could see cancellation as, the thing that everybody will be doing anyway. So nobody could really put you on the spot for canceling that. But 2021 is unfortunately going to have to be a put up or shut up year for a lot of these conventions, regardless of whether they think it's going to be a big year for them or not. You're gonna have to put something on, or you're gonna be risking just putting your convention in jeopardy permanently and actually suffer the same fate as FAU right here. Regardless of whether or not FAU, or regardless of whether or not your event will actually have the same amount of attendees that it did pre-COVID. I doubt it, but you never know. This also means that conventions have to be creative as to how they're going to be handling an event. They can't just host, if you can't just host the event like you did pre-COVID, maybe get a little creative over how you will plan an alternative, or what you will plan as a hybrid to take place of the event, so that the year after that you can actually host a full event. But apparently there were too many unknowns that were kind of bogging down FAU, and they were reading the tea leaves about missing 2 years in a row. This is the problem. There were too many unknowns that could have put the convention in financial jeopardy. And not only that, listen, these unknowns, when I'm saying financial jeopardy, I mean this could threaten the convention and the organization that runs the convention into bankruptcy. And once you declare bankruptcy, there's no going back from that. I don't care, how rich you are.
There is. Well, no. There is. There are different chapters of bankruptcy. Of course, those are corporations, but there's complete liquidation of all assets. Or there's also, what many of the airlines do, as you know, Lifty. They, they go into bankruptcy or reorganization.
Well,
and they reorganize.
How does an event reorganize though? How does an event like this reorganize?
Take a couple of years off. Get their finances in order. Maybe
do what?
Maybe dump the for-profit model that they like. Which
if they dump the for-profit model, how are they going to restructure themselves through bankruptcy as a non-profit? That's what I want to know. It just doesn't add up.
What do you mean it doesn't add up?
It just does.
So you're telling me you can't restructure yourself as a non-profit?
If you're losing money, what bankruptcy court will allow you to be a non-profit?
I'm sure there are some. I'm sure there's some who will do that.
No, a bankruptcy judge is gonna look at that and say, no. If you are losing money, how in the hell are you going to reorganize into a non-profit? That just makes no sense.
Then don't go the non-profit route. Go another route then.
Well,
then keep the for-profit model. Don't come back for the year 2021. Come back in 2022 with a better business model. I mean, it's entirely possible.
Well,
and that's what they should have. That's what they could do.
Well, I mean, but you got to understand, most conventions have already written off 2020 as a loss.
Well, I said 2020. Yeah. I didn't say 2020. I said skip 2020.
I know. I'm saying 2020 is already. You're skipping 2020. You're skipping the importance of 2020. They've already written off 2020. So you're saying that they need to also write off 2021. FAU is saying right now that they couldn't do that. They could not handle that. They could not handle that. And that's where I'm like sounding the alarm. Can you handle going off going off for 2 years in a row? Most cons cannot.
Well, then that's why they need to get their
I
financial house in order. They
I
can.
think they're going. I
What you're
think
saying that most clients can't handle doing a break, and I get that. In this case, in order for them to survive, they're gonna have to do that. They would
well,
have. They,
yeah.
hypothetically, if they were still around, I would tell them, hey, take 2021 off. Get your financial house in order. Figure out what you want to do in order to make.
You don't understand it. I'm telling you, you do not understand. They already took off 2020, so they're taking the financial loss. They're taking the hit from having to cancel 2020, and then telling them take 2021 off. They're gonna say screw you. They're gonna tell you fuck off, because
And
no,
they're
no,
just
no,
gonna.
no, 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 because you're asking them to take a hit 2 years in a row, take a financial hit 2 years in a row with no profits flowing in to actually build back from that. So when they are going off from bankruptcy, when they when they declare bankruptcy from this, they're reorganizing their assets. They're cleaning their house for the sake of those involved, like Dragoneer and the board. They want to clear. They want to do it for their own sake, not for the sake of the organization. The organization is done. The organization cannot survive 2 years in a row of cancellations, and they say that plainly by this. So they're just folding it in. They're calling it. They're folding it in, and they're just going to say, okay, you know what? We're just going to clear this out. We're going to get our assets straightened out. We're going to get our financial house in order, and we're going to just pack up and go home.
All right, so our producer would actually like to chime in and give us
Go ahead.
his input on this.
Go ahead.
What's up, Happy?
So I think an important thing to consider is whether or not these kind of gatherings are even going to be allowed by federal or state mandates.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I brought up too. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. The thing with, we have a vaccine now. We have a few options of vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've been hearing is that it doesn't just take, one injection of the vaccine. You need a booster.
Mm-hmm.
So you're probably going to have to get the vaccine, wait a month or so, get a second shot,
Mm-hmm.
then wait even more time, a few weeks, for the antibodies to develop, and then continue waiting while everyone else gets the shot. So that is going to take a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So this might not even be relevant until very late in the year. Like, they might not even be able to make a decision that says, like, hey, yeah, let's have the convention, is because they might not be allowed to.
Well, that's true, and that's what I said in a prior podcast, that state and local guidelines are probably going to be the end-all, be-all voice that will decide once and for all whether your event can go on. Because if state and local guidelines say no, then guess what? That binds the hotel's hands. They have to abide by state and local guidelines as well. Otherwise, they're going to get sued, or they might get fined. And I'm not hearing that from planners and event organizers. I'm not hearing that going through as part of their decision making, and that ticks me off, because they're all thinking, they're all trying to read the future, so to speak, on how many people will be affected with COVID in March and April and May. How many cases will cases rise in May? Will cases fall in March? And I'm like, no. What are you doing? No. That's the exact thing. Listen, the state and local guidelines are what the hotels are going by. And if you don't have state and local guidelines preventing you from hosting this event as such, if you don't have state and local guidelines preventing you from hosting your event, the hotels are going to say, well, you know what? Go ahead. Hold it. We're fine with it. You don't have anything holding you back, so why are you holding back?
Well, they would still have an obligation, at the very least morally, to not allow their attendees to be
Nope. No. Nope. When it comes to contracts, there's no room in contracts for moral obligations. I'll say that. There is no room whatsoever. Contracts are like, what's that?
It would also open them to lawsuits.
Well, that's where we mentioned the coronavirus clause that FAU had. Now, I don't know much about that coronavirus clause, but it can go either way. And that's about as much room as you get for moral obligations. But again, moral obligations, the problem with moral obligations, quote unquote, is there's many different ways that it can be interpreted and many different ways that fault can be found in either case. So moral obligations probably won't stand up in court. Honestly, it won't stand up in court. If you have a written contract compared to moral obligations, the judge will side with the written contract every time. I mean, COVID or not, the written word is almost law compared to moral obligations. And I understand moral obligations, but that's again trying to foretell the future and trying to play safe with the future, and that can bite you in the ass later on. But I'm just saying that. What's that?
Either one can. If you kill off all of your attendees, then you won't have anyone to come to the next convention. And I'm being hyperbolic in this example.
Yeah.
Of course. If you're turning people off at the convention, then you're going to do them anyway. So it's a hard decision.
I understand it's a hard decision. It's a hard decision because convention organizers and the convention chairs, the boards, they don't want to be the people responsible for an outbreak happening at their event. They want their event to be safe and fun for everyone. And if it comes back to them like an outbreak was traced to this event at XYZ City that was still handled, that was held despite coronavirus restrictions, then they could be opening themselves up to a massive lawsuit, and they will lose. They will absolutely lose, especially yeah. But they're having to make a tough choice right now, and that is, do you sacrifice the well-being of the organization that you have been chosen to run, or do you sacrifice the well-being of your attendees? Now there is a middle ground there. Of course, I've mentioned that those are two big extremes, and right now that's the problem, is that when it comes to discussing, what steps to take, they're looking at two extremes. They're not looking at the middle. And that's where I kind of get irritated with how planners or if convention organizers are looking at it. They're looking at it as, one end of two extremes.
Yeah. No, they are.
Yeah.
I would just say that when people plan for conventions, they have to think about the future,
Mhm.
and they have to, unfortunately, predict how things are going to be down the line.
Well,
Months.
you can't do that. I'm gonna step in and say no. You can't do that. But what you can do is the best thing you can do is like FAU tried, make up a clause and try to be as detailed as possible. Explain to the other party what your conditions are and what you want to meet as a condition, and try to be as detailed as possible. You can't predict the future because, of course, if you told people in 2019 or even in 2020, if you told furthermore attendees in 2020, this past furthermore, that they might not be going to furthermore 2021, what do you think that would do to ticket sales?
Plummet. It would be non-existent.
Exactly. You can't. So an organizer or convention chair or convention head cannot just predict the future and say, well, unfortunately next year we're going to expect this coronavirus to not go away, so we're going to have to move to a virtual con next year. And of course nobody's going to be paying for tickets because nobody wants to buy a ticket and then have to roll it over to 2022 because 2021 is written off. Same thing with if you told FAU attendees in 2019, the final year, that 2020 would not happen. In 2021 would not happen either because they would decide in 2020, late 2020, that they would be closing. I know that there are people that pre-reg for 2020 in 2019. What would these people believe? And what would they do? I think that if you kind of open Pandora's box and speculate a little too much, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot.
Okay. Now let's move this conversation to other conventions,
Mm-hmm.
particularly. All right, bye, Happy.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you for your input, by the way. A wonderful producer, very smart individual.
Very.
Yeah.
But let's move this to other conventions, specifically smaller conventions.
Mhm.
Where does the collapse of FA United in a COVID world leave smaller conventions post-COVID?
Oh. Well, I know right now they're endangered. They are endangered. They have to make a very tough choice. And like I said, it's either put up or shut up. They got to do something for 2021 or they can pretty much collapse. There won't be a 2022 or 2023 or 2020 anything. And that's what we're seeing with FAU right now is that, like you said, you said that it would, all they would need to do is just cancel 2021, but I'm just saying they already canceled 2020 and they're buckling from the pressure of canceling for 2020, and when they're trying to get something together for 2021, there's just too many unknowns. There's too much going on, too much at stake to take that chance and go into even worse financial jeopardy. And I think the same issues are going through the con chairs of these smaller cons. I know of several, like for SonaCon. I don't know if SonaCon is still running.
It is.
Well,
Virginia Beach.
yeah.
It's still running.
Yep. Tiny Paws Con, that's a very tiny con up in Danbury.
Danbury, Connecticut, yeah.
And
Blue Ridge Fur Fair.
yeah, I don't know if that was
Western
1,000.
Furry Weekend.
Yeah, there you go. Western PA Furry Weekend.
Alamo City Invasion, or whatever the fuck it's called.
Now, I think they're confident that they will host an event in 2021. Just like Stratosphere is confident that they'll host an event September 2021. So I think the Texas cons might be happening. Even Texas Furry Fiesta, which is in February, I think they might be happening. But like I said, they've got to put up or shut up.
The only reason TFF or even FWA will be happening is because the states they're in decided that, hey, it's cool to not, socially distance. You don't have to adhere to that. And so those states don't care. They're like, do what you want to do.
Well,
and that's the reason why they're happening.
But Silox, again, the hotels will come back to these events. If they try to cancel, they will come back to these events and say, hey, there's nothing stopping you. What are you doing? And they will demand that you pay for that event, for all the contracts that you have to cancel. They will demand that you pay for it. And, what do you get out of it? Nothing.
If 80Con in those states hosts, they're going to receive so much blowback.
I don't know. Well, again, the hotels don't care. The hotels are looking at the state and local guidelines. If there are no state and local guidelines preventing these events from happening, then they signed a contract. They signed a contract saying that they would host an event at this point in time with all of these vendors, with all of this contracted employees and such, all these services, etc. And the hotel is looking out for themselves and for their employees.
Well, I get that, but my point is, even if they have to host them, it's a PR disaster. Hey, we're hosting in the middle of a pandemic, and you can't tell me, well, vaccines will be dispersed to the public. No, at that time they're still only going to be dispersed out to, I think, military members. The general public won't receive theirs until late April, early May, and TFF is happening in February.
Yeah.
FWA is happening in early May. That's a PR disaster.
Can I just give a hot take for a minute?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I have never given a single solitary fuck about the vaccine. I think we've put all of our eggs towards the vaccine basket, and we've not once tried to improve on our testing. We've not once improved on our treatments. We've not once tried to ensure that the people who are already affected get better and actually prolong their life, prolong their mortality, and make sure that they're not dying from this. We put all of our eggs towards the vaccine basket because we had this mentality that the vaccine will save us. And, well, it's here, it's happening, but I just think that we've focused too much on the vaccine, and we've lost so much potential to improve on actually treating those who are actually sick and actually improving our testing so that it's more effective. That's where I'm disappointed. Now you can disagree with me, but the vaccine, whether we have the vaccine or not, it matters very little to me. I think that we should have been focused on treatment. I think we should have been focused on testing. I think that we should have been able to prepare tests that are able to give you an accurate diagnosis of COVID that same day. Instead, I have to wait 3 days for me to get a test, and then by that time, who knows what I have. I'll tell you, well, actually, we're going to be talking about COVID at another podcast, but because I don't want us to get too carried away on COVID. But anyway, that's just my take.
And that's fine. And you know what? No, that's a fine take. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
We can get into nuances with that later. But
Yeah.
again, as it pertains to cons, the vaccines again won't be ready until the general public. So even if these cons are forced to happen, one, anybody that goes is going to be ostracized on Twitter. Like full stop. That's gonna happen. You are risking ostracization, being called out, being canceled on Twitter by people. We saw it last weekend with the idiots who decided to have a party at MFF, unofficial MFF Con 2020.
Shylock, that is next week's podcast. What are you doing?
We're hinting at it. Point is, they got doxxed, and we'll cover that next week. What I'm saying is, if these cons host, it's a PR disaster. It's a no-win situation either way for anybody involved. If they don't host, well, they're on the hook for the hotel. They have to pay.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
If they do host, no one's coming, or very little will come. So they're still on the hook for the hotel for a lot of money. Plus, it's a PR disaster. It's a no-win situation with this.
Yeah. Well, that's where FAU was kind of wondering, they don't know if people are going to come back in the same numbers as they did pre-COVID. And that's not something that you can, I don't think that you can, you can survey, you can probably survey to see if people will want to come. But it's all about possibly just, I guess, oh crap, I can't talk right now. But but it's all speculation. It's all speculation that people can't really speculate properly. There are, of course, ways to predict and survey whether or not people will be coming, but at the same time, you're kind of left in a situation where you're screwed one way and you're screwed the other way. You're gonna have to go with whatever screws you the least. So for some of these event organizers, for some of these convention chairs, they're going to look at 2021 and say, well, we got to do something. Let's go. And, they're doing that because that's the only way that they can sustain the event that they have been chosen to chair. They have been chosen to chair this event. So they must lead this event. They shouldn't lead it to ruin.
They should, but they should also
realize. Yeah.
They should also realize that it's a no-win situation, regardless of what they do next year. Yeah. At least for the spring conventions and some of the early summer ones, it's a no-win situation. Now, fall and winter, that's different. It's likely that those will probably go in without a hitch. But the spring ones and the early summer ones, they're no-win situations, unfortunately.
Well,
damned if they do, damned if they don't.
Well,
I don't envy any con chair on those conventions who has to make that decision.
Well,
that's
there's things that conventions can do, so that they can actually at least show that they care. Never mind that. If they don't have any coronavirus restrictions in their state, the hotel is going to say, well, there's nothing holding you back. Why are you holding back? There are things that conventions can do, and this is what they need to be discussing at length with their other board members, with staff, getting ideas. And one of these things is, okay, this year for 2021, it's going to be a locals-only convention. That means nobody from out of state, just people within the state of, whatever. With Texas, That's a big ass state. So you don't know how that could go with a state as big as Texas. But FAU, that was well known as a locals only con. I don't know of just about anybody. I don't know of anybody that actually flies in from like somewhere else to attend FAU of all conventions. And I don't want to shit on. I don't want to shit on.
There was a guy who did fly in from England to attend FAU, last FAU. There was one person from England who did that.
Bruh.
Yes.
You know what? I'm not going to question you. I'm not going to question you if you want to have a good time here in Dulles. But, bruh, there's plenty of other conventions that you can go to and spend your fuck you money. Go over there. Where was I? But yeah, so that's one thing that conventions can do is just close it to out-of-state attendees and respectfully say, hey, please, we would like this to just be attended by those within the state. For those that are out of state, we can offer refunds. We can roll over your attendance to 2022 or whatever. That's one thing. They can also do temperature checks. They can require masks. They can lower or limit the amount of people that actually attend. And like I said, these are things that they need to be talking about. Everybody needs to be talking about. So that at least if nothing's holding you back, nothing from the state or the city that you're being hosted in is holding you back, you can at least have some way to have people over and still maintain some level of safety. So that at least it limits your liability. And why conventions and convention chairs aren't looking at this? They're looking at, either we host it as is or we cancel it. That's just, that's two halves of that's two extremes. It's two extremes.
What you're saying, well, here's the problem with that. You can only mandate those things within con space. You can't socially distance in a hotel room. That's never going to happen. You can't tell people, hey, you can't go to that hotel, you can't go to that room party. You have to social distance. You can't mandate masks in a hotel room. Only on con space. Are we going to be testing
Hold
people?
up.
Are we going to be testing people in the con space? Like, they have to be tested before they enter.
I never said anything about tests. And I'm a big skeptic of tests. We'll talk about that next week. But
I'm telling you, some cons going to do that.
But hold on. Now, hotels are likely to have policies about masks, about social distancing, about capacity limits within the common areas. They will have they can actually limit who checks in. If they don't want people from out of state checking in, they can refuse them. So the convention can work hand in hand with the hotel to maintain guidelines and enforce guidelines within their property that can apply to the entire hotel.
Well, hold up now. With the whole out-of-state thing, people can lie, right?
No, because you have to show them your ID. You have to show your ID, and you have to show your ID when you check in. If you show your ID and it's from out of state, guess what? Oh, you're out of state. Well, unfortunately, we have a policy at this hotel stating that we are not allowing those who are out of state to check in.
Can a con legally ban people from out of state from attending?
A con, no. A hotel, yes.
I feel feel this is something we'd have to ask Boozy about because
This would be something great to talk to Boozy about. Actually,
I can totally imagine someone crying discrimination because I'm from XYZ state with a lot of cases. I'm not allowed at this state. I can imagine that.
I mean, we've done that.
Then you know what?
I mean,
I can also
look at DC,
bringing up the Interstate Commerce Clause, believe it or not.
But look at DC. DC has for a while stated that if you are from this state, that state, that state, that state, that state, you must, if you are visiting DC, you must quarantine for 14 days. And then if you leave DC to this state, that state, whatever, you can quarantine for 14 days. You have to quarantine for 14 days. That's what they were doing in Texas as well. I remember back during around May or so, they were having Texas Marshals at the major airports, and they were actually checking everybody's IDs, and they were having them sign an affidavit stating that you promise to, when you go home, you will quarantine for 14 days. I don't know how they enforce that, but they made, well, they're not. It's not going to stop them from trying. And it's not going to stop them from making you sign an affidavit before you leave the airport.
It's like the people who say, "Well, you can't come into this state if you're from a state with X amount of cases." They can't.
No. Hawaii did it, and Hawaii did it successfully.
Well, that's Hawaii. Like Pennsylvania can say all at once, "Hey, your state, let's say Delaware, is out of control of cases. Because you're from Delaware, you can't come here." Well, they're not going to shut the border down. One, that's a logistical nightmare, and two, I'm sure that's a violation of some clause within the Constitution that I don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
They can't enforce that. That whole, hey, you can't come here, that's more of a guideline. Because they can't legally enforce that. It would probably take an act of law from Congress to enforce that. So legally, they can't say, you can't come here. Because they don't know where I'm from.
Well,
unless I provide my license.
You have your driver's license, you have your ID.
Unless I provide my license to a police officer and say...
I mean, you have to. You pretty much have to if they ask for it. If they pull you over, yeah. They will see it.
Yeah, but if no cop is stopping me as I pass the state line, I mean, what are you gonna do? It's just, at this point, it's just, a guideline. It's like, which is like the whole same thing with DC. It's a guideline. Of course, DC police is not gonna stop you from entering.
Yeah.
Like that's a logistical nightmare, and it would impede the flow of commerce. Honestly, you'd fuck everything up. So
I mean, there are certain businesses and business sectors that those kinds of guidelines can actually be in effect. That's where I think Muriel Bowser's rules on COVID quarantining from out of state actually apply. But like I said, I don't know how they were planning to enforce these rules. I'm just saying that they did them. I'm saying that Texas did them, I'm saying DC did them, and I'm saying Hawaii did them. And if you decide to flaunt them, you might be screwed. But we're running low on time, so I guess we're just going to have to wrap it up with some final thoughts. I was just going to say this. This is a very sad day, or this is kind of a very bittersweet kind of loss for our local area. I know FAU wasn't our favorite convention, but it's still something to lament, and it's kind of a warning to other smaller conventions that the same fate might happen to you again, or it might happen to you in your event if you decide to cancel for 2 years in a row. I know that smaller events are not as flush with cash as larger events, so they can't really weather these kinds of disruptions for so long. So here's what I'm saying, especially to Furthermore, which is our our local con. If you decide in March that you're going to host an event in person, I will personally attend it. Damn the haters and damn the coronavirus, but I will attend it to support you. If you decide to cancel due to coronavirus concerns, that's also fine too. And I will not just thumb my nose at your event for being pussies or whatever. No, you did what you had to do, and that's fine. And we will attend your virtual event. We will have a panel at your virtual event, if so choosing. And, no hard feelings. You did what you had to do. And that's what I'm saying, that a lot of these conventions, we're just going to have to do what they have to do. For better or worse, they will have to do what they have to do. And I hope that they make sure that they get creative on how to best hold their event. Whether it requires fewer attendees, whether it requires masks, whether it requires social distancing, whether it requires calling the hotel and telling them, hey, please do not allow out-of-towners into this hotel. Thank you. Whatever. You have to be creative. You can't just consider canceling as the only option, because I don't think to me, that's not really acceptable. I mean, I think that's just a very extreme point, or a very extreme decision that would have to be made if all other decisions or all other options are gone. Silas, did you want to have some final thoughts on this?
I would just say that, in my opinion, it will be very irresponsible for any convention to even think about holding something in the spring and early summer. I just don't see it happening. I really don't see it happening. If it does, then may God have mercy on you, on your PR, your public relations team, because furries are going to take the piss out of you or anyone who attends that event, because it's not going to go over well. I get it. You have no other choice. And, even if you have it, people won't come. Not enough to fill your coffers to the point where you're able to pay the hotel back for that year. But I also get it. If you don't host, well, you don't have any money to pay them back to begin with. So it's, once again, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I don't envy any convention chair person who's having a con in early 2021. That's a difficult decision, and I don't wish that on anybody. So all I can say is, may God have mercy on your souls, because wow, that's rough.
Yeah.
That's really rough.
I know. Convention chairs and convention organizers, they're in a very big bind right now, but they've got to do what they've got to do. And whatever that may be, I say God bless you for whatever decision you decide to take. Anyway, this has been, we've just run out the clock. Thank you again for joining us on another exciting episode of Furry Frequencies. And if you do like what you hear, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to this Twitter channel, twitch.tv/Furry Frequencies. And if you do also like what you hear on YouTube, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit that bell for notifications on when our next upload will happen. And lastly, yes?
Speaking of YouTube, we will be uploading all of the episodes that we've done since we last uploaded this weekend. And going forward, we will also be uploading the latest episode that we record tonight, the same night that we recorded.
Awesome.
So that way there will be no more delays. You won't have to wait for us to make a splash screen. You'll just get to see our lovely avatars up close and personal. As a as a thumbnail. But look for all that to be done and over with by the end of this weekend.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Anyway, also for your latest Furry Frequencies shenanigans and whatever, we do ask you again to follow our Twitter page at Furry Frequency, and it just looks like this. Please feel free to like our tweets, retweet our tweets, and also follow us on Twitter for the latest shenanigans and also the most up-to-date links to our newest episodes. Anyway, this has been Furry Frequencies signing off with Lifty
and Silox.
Thank you again for joining us, and we hope you have a great night.